The red warning lights flashed across the bridge of the U.S. Defiant as Captain James Walker stood at the command station, his hands gripping the metal railing. Through the main viewport, he watched the burning wreckage of Earth's defense fleet drift silently through space. Just hours ago, 30 ships had stood ready to defend humanity. Now only the Defiant remained. Ada, damage report, Walker called out to the ship's AI system. A soft blue light pulsed from the ceiling as the artificial intelligence responded. Hull integrity at 97%. All systems operating within normal parameters. Ada's calm voice filled the bridge. The experimental mirror shield absorbed most of the enemy fire during our retreat. Walker nodded, though his jaw remained tight. The Defiant had survived because of its advanced technology, but the cost had been steep. Too steep. He looked around at his bridge crew. The men and women he'd trained with for the past 3 years. Their faces showed exhaustion, but also determination. Captain, Lieutenant Emma Reed called from the weapons station. Long-range sensors are picking up unusual activity at the edge of the solar system. Multiple objects emerging from hyperspace. Walker straightened his back. This was it. The main invasion force they'd been warned about. The earlier attack had just been a scout group, testing Earth's defenses. Now the real threat was arriving. Ada, give me a count on those ships, he ordered. Processing, Ada replied. The AI took exactly 2.3 seconds to analyze the sensor data. I detect 523 vessels of various classes. 87% match known collective warship designs. Engineer Tom Miller's voice came through the ship's internal comm system. Captain, the Nexus core is fully charged. Mirror shield systems are ready for extended combat operations. Walker allowed himself a small smile. The Defiant might be outnumbered, but she wasn't outgunned. Not in the traditional sense, anyway. The ship represented humanity's greatest technological achievement. A perfect blend of defensive and offensive capabilities that no one in the galaxy had ever seen before. All hands, this is the captain speaking. Walker's voice carried throughout the ship. What you're about to see on your sensors isn't a mistake. The collective is sending their main fleet, over 500 ships, to finish what they started. They think that because they destroyed most of our fleet, Earth will be an easy target. He paused, letting his words sink in. They're wrong. The Defiant was built for exactly this moment. Every test, every trial, every simulation we've run has prepared us for this fight. We're not just another warship. We're humanity's best chance for survival. The bridge crew straightened in their seats. They knew what was at stake. Earth had barely recovered from the climate wars 50 years ago, when the collective first appeared in human space. The alien empire had offered humanity a simple choice: surrender and be absorbed into their civilization, or be destroyed. Earth's response had been to pour every resource into developing new technology. While other species focused on building bigger weapons and stronger shields, humanity took a different approach. The Defiant was the result, a ship that could turn an enemy's strength against them. Dr. Gray, status of the Nexus core. Walker asked the scientist who had helped develop the ship's predictive combat system. The quantum matrices are aligned perfectly, Dr. Marcus Gray reported from his station. The core is already processing possible enemy formations and attack patterns. We'll be able to predict their moves before they make them. Walker watched as the tactical display showed the collective fleet moving closer. Their ships arranged themselves in their standard attack formation, a three-dimensional arrow designed to concentrate their firepower. It was an impressive sight, but Walker knew it would also be their weakness. Ada, start recording, Walker commanded. If this works, Earth will want to know exactly how we did it. If it doesn't, he left the sentence unfinished. Recording initiated, Ada confirmed. Captain, I should note that based on my calculations, our chances of survival against a fleet this size are approximately. Don't tell me the odds, Ada, Walker interrupted with a slight grin. Just help us prove them wrong. The bridge crew worked quietly at their stations, each person focused on their tasks. They had trained countless hours for this scenario, though none of them had truly believed they would face such overwhelming odds. Through the viewport, the first signs of the collective fleet became visible, tiny points of light that grew larger with each passing moment. Their ships were biological in appearance, with curved lines and organic shapes that contrasted sharply with the Defiant's angular, human design. Enemy fleet will be in weapons range in 10 minutes, Lieutenant Reed reported. They're launching fighter squadrons. Walker nodded. Just as we expected. Ada, begin power distribution sequence alpha. Engineer Miller, prepare the mirror shield for maximum capacity. Aye, Captain. Miller's voice came back. Diverting power from non-essential systems. Shield matrix is charging. The Defiant's revolutionary mirror shield wasn't just a defensive barrier. It was an intricate web of quantum-linked energy fields that could capture incoming enemy fire and store it. That energy could then be redirected back at the attackers, turning their own weapons against them. The more powerful the enemy's attack, the more dangerous the Defiant became. 5 minutes to weapons range, Reed updated. Captain, they're transmitting a message. Put it through, Walker ordered. A deep, resonating voice filled the bridge. Human vessel, this is Admiral Kresh of the Collective. Your resistance is futile. Surrender now, and we will spare your crew. Continue to fight, and you will join the rest of your fleet in death. Walker pressed the comm button on his chair. Admiral Kresh, this is Captain James Walker of the U.S. Defiant. We appreciate your offer, but we'll have to decline. In fact, we have a counter-proposal for you. You dare to make demands. Kresh's voice carried a mixture of amusement and annoyance. One ship against our fleet. Not a demand, Walker replied calmly. Just a friendly warning. What you're about to see might change your perspective on warfare. You could save a lot of lives by turning around now. The only response was silence, followed by the termination of the communication channel. 2 minutes to weapons range, Reed announced. Enemy fighters are moving to attack position. Walker took a deep breath. Everything they had worked for came down to this moment. Ada, initialize the Nexus Core. Full predictive analysis of enemy movements. Engineer Miller, mirror shield to full power. Dr. Gray, I want real-time updates on the quantum matrices. The bridge hummed with energy as the Defiant systems came fully online. The ship's AI worked in perfect harmony with the human crew, processing billions of calculations per second to prepare for the coming battle. Enemy fighters entering range in 30 seconds, Reed reported. Walker stood tall, his voice firm and clear. All hands, battle stations, remember your training. Remember Earth. Let's show the Collective why they should have never underestimated humanity. The first wave of alien fighters streaked toward the Defiant, their weapons charging with deadly energy. Behind them, the massive Collective fleet moved forward like an unstoppable tide of destruction. But as the enemy fighters opened fire, something unexpected happened. The space around the Defiant seemed to ripple like water, and the incoming plasma bolts disappeared into shimmering fields of energy. The mirror shield didn't just block the attacks, it absorbed them, storing their power for the perfect moment to strike back. Shield capacity at 20% and rising, Miller reported excitedly. The system is working perfectly. Walker allowed himself a brief moment of satisfaction. The real battle was about to begin, but they had already proven their most important technology worked against actual collective weapons. Now they just had to survive long enough to use it. All right, he said, his eyes fixed on the approaching fleet. Let's show them what one ship can do. The first explosion lit up space like a newborn star. The Defiant's mirror shield had absorbed enough energy from the fighter attacks to release its first counterattack. The stored plasma energy erupted from the shield in a perfect arc, catching 3 collective fighters in its path. They never had a chance to evade. Direct hits on multiple targets, Lieutenant Reed reported, her fingers dancing across the weapons console. Enemy fighters are adjusting their attack pattern. Engineer Miller's voice crackled through the comm system. Shield capacity at 40% and climbing. Each fighter blast is adding to our reserve. We can maintain this output for hours if needed. Captain Walker watched as the remaining fighters broke formation, trying to attack from different angles. The Nexus Corps had predicted this exact response. Ada, implement defense pattern Delta. Let's show them why that won't work either. The Defiant moved with impossible grace for a ship its size, spinning and weaving between enemy attacks. Each blast that did connect was simply absorbed by the mirror shield, making the ship more dangerous with every passing second. Captain, Dr. Gray called out from his station. The Nexus Corps is detecting power spikes from the main fleet. They're preparing to enter the fight. Walker nodded grimly. The fighters had been a test, a way to probe the Defiant's defenses. Now the real battle would begin. All hands, brace for heavy combat. Engineer Miller, how much more energy can the mirror shield store? We're currently at 60% capacity, Miller replied. The system was designed to handle capital ship weapons. These fighter attacks are like filling a bathtub with a dropper. The main collective fleet moved forward, their massive ships casting long shadows across space. The first volley of heavy weapons fire lit up the darkness. A wall of destructive energy heading straight for the lone human vessel. Impact in 5 seconds, Reed warned. Energy readings are off the scale. Walker gripped his command rail tighter. Ada, full power to the mirror shield. Let's catch everything they throw at us. The space around the Defiant turned into a kaleidoscope of color as hundreds of energy weapons struck the shield simultaneously. The ship shuddered but held firm. On the engineering deck, Miller watched in amazement as the energy storage readings climbed rapidly. Shield capacity just hit 90%. He shouted over the comm. Captain, we've never tested the system with this much power before. Walker's eyes narrowed as he studied the tactical display. The collective fleet had arranged itself in a half-circle, trying to surround the Defiant. They still didn't understand what they were dealing with. Dr. Gray, what's the Nexus Corps telling us about their formation? They're falling into a standard containment pattern, Gray replied, examining the quantum predictions. The Corps calculates a 93% chance they'll try to trap us between their heavy cruisers and battleships. They think we're trying to break through their lines. A small smile crossed Walker's face. Ada, bring us to a complete stop. Engineer Miller, prepare for full discharge of the mirror shield on my mark. Captain, Ada's calm voice interjected. Remaining stationary will make us an easy target for their next barrage. Exactly, Walker replied. Lieutenant Reed, send a message to the collective fleet. Text only. Tell them we're experiencing engine trouble and request their terms of surrender. The bridge crew exchanged knowing looks. They had practiced this strategy in simulations, but never with this much stored energy. The collective's response came quickly. Another massive volley of weapons fire, even larger than the first. Impact in 10 seconds, Reed announced. They're concentrating everything they have on us. Walker's voice remained steady. Hold position. Engineer Miller, shield status. 98% capacity. 99. 100%. Miller's excitement was clear. Sir, the containment field is stable, but we've never held this much power before. We need to release it soon. The second barrage struck the Defiant, the energy disappearing into the mirror shield like water into an endless void. Warning alarms blared throughout the ship as the power storage systems were pushed to their limits. Shield capacity at 110%, Miller shouted. We're beyond theoretical maximums. Ada, calculate optimal firing solution, Walker commanded. Target their heaviest concentrations. Dr. Gray, I want Nexus Corps predictions for their most likely escape routes. The ship's AI took less than a second to process the request. Firing solution complete. Recommended release pattern will affect approximately 60% of their fleet in the initial burst. Walker took a deep breath. This was the moment that would prove whether the Defiant's revolutionary technology would work as designed, or if they had pushed it too far. Engineer Miller, begin power release sequence. Lieutenant Reed, prepare for manual targeting of secondary shots. Release sequence initiated, Miller confirmed, redirecting power to main emitters. The space around the Defiant began to glow with stored energy. The collective fleet, believing they had the human ship trapped, continued their advance. They didn't realize they had just helped create the perfect weapon against themselves. Release in 3, 2, 1. Miller counted down. Walker's voice cut through the tension. Fire. The mirror shield erupted with the combined power of hundreds of collective weapons. The stored energy burst forth in a devastating wave, but this was no random explosion. The shield focused the power into precise beams, each one targeting a specific enemy ship with their own energy signatures. The effect was catastrophic for the collective fleet. Dozens of ships were struck by weapons fire that matched their own shield's frequencies perfectly. Defensive barriers designed to stop enemy weapons were useless against their own energy patterns reflected back at them. Multiple direct hits, Reed reported, her voice rising with excitement. 37 enemy ships disabled or destroyed in the initial blast. Their formation is breaking apart. The collective fleet's neat formation dissolved into chaos as ships tried to evade the unexpected counterattack. But the Defiant wasn't finished. The mirror shield continued to release its stored energy in controlled bursts, each shot guided by Ada's precision and the Nexus Core's predictions. Admiral Kresh is signaling, Reed announced. They're demanding to know what kind of weapon we're using. Walker allowed himself a grim smile. No response needed, Lieutenant. They'll figure it out soon enough. He turned his attention back to the tactical display. Ada, status of remaining enemy ships. 342 vessels still combat capable, the AI reported. However, their attack patterns have become erratic. The Nexus Core predicts they are preparing to regroup at a safer distance. Not going to let that happen, Walker said firmly. Engineer Miller, how long until we can store another full charge? The system is already cooling down, Miller replied. We can begin absorbing energy again in 30 seconds. But Captain, that discharge put enormous strain on the containment fields. We might not want to push quite so far past the safety limits next time. Walker nodded. Noted. Lieutenant Reed, target the closest group of enemy ships. Standard weapons only for now. Let's encourage them to shoot back at us. The Defiant's conventional weapons might not have been enough to seriously damage the collective ships, but they didn't need to be. Each hit provoked return fire, and each blast of enemy energy was simply more ammunition for the mirror shield. Enemy ships are responding, Reed confirmed. They're launching another coordinated attack. Perfect, Walker said quietly. Ada, begin dodge pattern Epsilon. Engineer Miller, ready for another collection cycle. Dr. Gray, I want continuous Nexus Core updates on their fleet movements. The battle was far from over, but the tide had turned. The collective fleet had come expecting to find a single desperate human ship. Instead, they had found something unprecedented, a vessel that could absorb their attacks and turn their own power against them. Their superior numbers had become a liability, and their greatest strength was now their greatest weakness. Walker watched as the enemy fleet struggled to adapt to this new reality. Send a message to Earth Command, he ordered. Tell them the mirror shield works better than we ever imagined, and tell them to prepare for refugees. I have a feeling some of the collective ships will be looking for a new place to call home very soon. Admiral Kresh slammed his fist against his command chair. The bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Dominion, shook as another explosion rocked the massive vessel. He watched in disbelief as the human warship continued to tear through his fleet using their own weapons against them. Status report, he demanded from his crew. We've lost 98 ships, his second-in-command reported. The human vessel's energy readings make no sense. It's like fighting against a mirror. Everything we throw at it comes back stronger. On the Defiant, Captain Walker was studying the tactical display with growing confidence. The mirror shield had proven even more effective than their simulations had suggested. But he knew better than to get overconfident. Ada, analysis of remaining enemy forces, he ordered. The collective fleet has split into 3 groups, the AI reported. 2 smaller formations are attempting to flank our position, while their main force holds at maximum weapons range. The Nexus Corps predicts they are attempting to find weaknesses in our shield coverage. Engineer Miller's voice came through the comm. Captain, the shield matrix is holding steady at 70% capacity. We're actually gaining more power than we're using now that they've switched to controlled bursts instead of full barrages. Walker nodded. The enemy was learning, but not fast enough. Dr. Gray, what's the Nexus Corps telling us about their next likely move? Based on known collective tactics and their current formation, there's an 87% chance they'll try to overwhelm a single point in our defenses. Gray responded. They're probably hoping the mirror shield has limited coverage areas. Let them try, Walker said. Lieutenant Reed, prepare to receive fire from multiple vectors. Engineer Miller will need precise control for this next sequence. The collective ships began their coordinated attack. Dozens of ships fired simultaneously, their energy weapons converging on a single point of the Defiance shield. The human ship's outer barrier lit up like a Christmas tree, absorbing the massive energy assault. Shield capacity climbing rapidly, Miller reported. They're giving us more than enough power for another full counterattack. But something was different this time. Among the energy weapons, solid projectiles began streaming toward the Defiant, chunks of metal moving at incredible speeds. Physical rounds detected, Ada announced. Impact in 5 seconds. Walker's eyes narrowed. They're testing different weapon types. Ada, activate point defense systems. Engineer Miller, maintain shield focus on the energy weapons. The Defiant's defensive turrets came to life, shooting down the incoming projectiles with precise laser fire. But this was just the beginning of the collective's new strategy. Multiple signatures detected. Reed called out. They're launching some kind of pods toward us. Analysis, Walker demanded. The pods appear to be automated drone weapons, Ada reported. They are generating unusual energy patterns that don't match known collective weapons. Dr. Gray spoke up from his station. The Nexus Corps is having trouble predicting their behavior. These must be prototype weapons they've been holding in reserve. Walker made a quick decision. Lieutenant Reed, priority targets are those pods. Use conventional weapons to destroy them before they get close. Engineer Miller, prepare for emergency shield discharge if needed. The space around the Defiant became a chaotic battlefield as the ship's weapons targeted the incoming pods while the mirror shield continued absorbing energy attacks. Several pods exploded under the defensive fire, but 3 made it through. Pods are activating, Reed warned. The devices burst open, releasing clouds of metallic dust that began to swirl around the Defiant. As the particles moved, they started generating interference patterns that disrupted the ship's sensor readings. Sensor efficiency dropped to 60%, Ada reported. The particles appear to be designed to interfere with our targeting systems. Walker smiled grimly. It was a clever tactic, but not clever enough. Dr. Gray, have the Nexus Corps switch to probability mapping. We don't need perfect targeting for what comes next. Engineer Miller, prepare for wide-range discharge. But sir, Miller protested, without precise targeting, we could waste most of the stored energy. That's exactly what we want them to think, Walker replied. Ada, begin spin rotation. Let's show them another trick. The Defiant began to rotate slowly, the metallic cloud swirling around it. The collective ships moved closer, believing they had found a weakness in the human vessel's defenses. Enemy fleet is converging on our position, Reed reported. They're charging weapons. Hold position, Walker ordered. Engineer Miller, route power to the shield's outer matrix. Prepare for multiphase discharge. The collective ships opened fire, their weapons blazing through the metallic cloud. But instead of absorbing the energy in focused points, the mirror shield began to glow uniformly across its entire surface. Shield capacity at maximum, Miller announced. Ready for discharge on your mark. Walker waited until the enemy ships had committed fully to their attack. Now, Full radial burst. The Defiant's mirror shield released its stored energy in a perfect sphere of destructive force. The metallic cloud that had been meant to blind them instead acted as a conductor, carrying the energy outward in crackling arcs that connected with dozens of collective ships simultaneously. Multiple direct hits, Reed called out excitedly. Enemy ships losing power across all sectors. On the Eternal Dominion, Admiral Kresh watched in horror as his trap backfired spectacularly. The human ship had turned their countermeasure into a weapon, using the conductive particles to enhance their attack rather than hinder it. All ships, emergency withdrawal, he ordered. But before his fleet could respond, the Defiant launched its next attack. Target their command ship, Walker ordered. Full power to forward shields. Engineer Miller, prepare for ramming speed. Ramming speed. Miller's voice cracked. Captain, the mirror shield isn't designed for physical impacts. No, Walker agreed, but it's designed to absorb energy. And at these speeds, a collision generates quite a bit of energy, doesn't it? Understanding dawned on the engineer's face. Converting kinetic impact to stored power. That's brilliant. And completely insane. The Defiant surged forward, its mirror shield glowing brighter as it accelerated toward the collective flagship. Enemy ships scattered in panic, their formation breaking completely. Impact in 10 seconds. Reed announced. All hands, brace for theoretical physics. Walker called over the ship-wide comm. The Defiant slammed into the Eternal Dominion shields at relativistic speed. The massive energy of the impact was instantly absorbed by the mirror shield, converted into pure power that the human ship could use. Shield capacity off the charts, Miller shouted, converting kinetic energy to weapons charge. Firing. The stored power released in a focused beam that cut through the collective flagship shields like they weren't even there. The massive ship's engines died, its weapons went dark, and its mighty hull began to drift. Enemy flagship disabled. Ada reported calmly. Remaining collective forces are retreating to safe jump distances. Walker watched as the enemy fleet fled in disarray, leaving their admiral's ship floating helplessly in space. Lieutenant Reed, open a channel to Admiral Kresh. When the connection was established, Walker spoke clearly and firmly. Admiral, I believe now would be a good time to discuss those surrender terms you mentioned earlier. Your ships are welcome to return to collective space, or they can stay and learn how humanity handles victory. There was a long pause before Kresh's response came through. Perhaps we have misjudged humanity's capabilities. That's putting it mildly, Walker replied. But we're willing to teach, if you're willing to learn. The Defiant's shuttle bay doors opened slowly as Admiral Kresh's personal transport approached. Captain Walker stood with his senior staff, watching as the collective leader came to surrender formally. The massive alien vessel that had once been the flagship of a mighty invasion fleet now drifted powerless nearby, a testament to humanity's technological triumph. Ada, maintain full shield coverage, Walker ordered quietly. Just because they're surrendering doesn't mean we drop our guard. Shield matrix active, the AI confirmed. All weapon systems remain on standby. The collective shuttle landed smoothly, its organic design contrasting sharply with the geometric lines of the human bay. When the doors opened, Admiral Kresh emerged, his tall frame having to duck under the entrance. 2 guards flanked him, but they carried no visible weapons. Welcome aboard the Defiant, Admiral, Walker said as Kresh approached. I trust you'll find our discussion more productive than our previous exchange. Kresh's 4 eyes blinked in sequence, a sign of confusion in his species. I must know, Captain Walker. How long has humanity possessed this technology? Our intelligence suggested your species was centuries behind us in energy manipulation. Walker gestured toward the conference room. That's an interesting question, Admiral. But first, let's make sure your remaining ships understand their situation. Engineer Miller. Miller stepped forward with a tablet. The mirror shield is currently holding enough stored energy to disable another 50 ships. just in case anyone's getting any ideas about a rescue attempt. The alien admiral's skin changed color slightly, the equivalent of a human paling. No rescue will be attempted, I assure you. My orders to withdraw have been acknowledged by all remaining vessels, but you must understand our confusion. One ship should not be able to defeat an entire fleet. They entered the conference room, where Dr. Gray had set up a holographic display of the battle's key moments. The scientist began explaining as everyone took their seats. "You see, Admiral, we didn't build a better weapon," Gray said, manipulating the hologram to show the mirror shield in action. "We built a better mirror. Every shot your fleet fired made us stronger. The laws of physics haven't changed. We just found a more efficient way to use them." Kresh leaned forward, studying the display intently. "But the energy requirements, the computational power needed to redirect such forces. That's where I come in." Ada's voice filled the room, causing the collective officers to start slightly. "My quantum processors work in parallel with the Nexus core to manage the energy flow. Human creativity combined with artificial intelligence." The Admiral's color shifted again, this time to a deeper hue. "You trust artificial intelligence to control your most powerful weapons. Our study showed humans were particularly afraid of such technology." Walker smiled. "We were, still are in some ways. But we learned to work with our fears rather than be controlled by them. Just like we learned to work with AI rather than try to control it. Ada is our partner, not our servant. Just as the mirror shield works with enemy energy, rather than trying to block it," Lieutenant Reed added. "It's all about adaptation and cooperation rather than pure opposition." The alien leader was quiet for a long time, processing this information. Finally, he spoke. "The collective has existed for 10,000 years. We have absorbed hundreds of species into our empire. Never have we encountered one that could turn our own strength against us so effectively." "That's because you've always looked for species to absorb," Walker replied. "You never considered looking for partners." Miller brought up another display, showing the damage to both fleets. "Your ships can be repaired. Your crews can be saved. But first, you need to understand that humanity won't be conquered. Not by you, not by anyone." "And what are your terms?" Kresh asked, his tone now respectful rather than condescending. Walker stood and walked to the window, looking out at the stars. "First, immediate withdrawal of all collective forces from human space. Second, recognition of Earth and all human colonies as sovereign territory. Third, and most importantly, technological exchange." This last point seemed to surprise the Admiral. "You would share the mirror shield technology with us?" "No," Walker said firmly. "But we would be willing to work with you to develop new technologies that benefit both our species, together, as equals." Dr. Gray brought up another hologram, this one showing potential applications of their combined technologies. "Your organic ship designs, combined with our energy manipulation techniques, could revolutionize space travel. Your experience with multiple species, combined with our adaptive AI systems, could create unprecedented opportunities for communication and cooperation." "And if we refuse?" Kresh asked, though his tone suggested he already knew the answer. Walker turned back from the window. "Then you leave anyway. But without the benefits of partnership. And you do so knowing that the next time you encounter a human ship, it might have capabilities you haven't even imagined yet. The mirror shield is impressive, Admiral, but it's not our only breakthrough." The alien leader's color shifted to a neutral tone, a sign of deep thought among his species. "The collective council will need to be convinced. Our way of life has remained unchanged for millennia." "Change is what humans do best," Walker replied. "We can help you adapt, just like we helped Ada evolve. Just like we turned our fear of AI into a partnership that saved our planet today." Lieutenant Reed's console beeped softly. "Captain, we're receiving transmissions from multiple collective ships. They're requesting permission to send representatives to observe the negotiations." Walker looked at Kresh questioningly. The Admiral's color shifted to a lighter shade, Amusement, perhaps, or resignation. It seems, Kresh said slowly, that some of my commanders are showing signs of human-like adaptability already. Perhaps this is how new eras begin, not with conquest, but with curiosity. Ada, Walker called out, prepare to receive additional shuttles. Dr. Gray, expand your presentation to include our theoretical works on cross-species technological integration. Engineer Miller, would you show our guests how the mirror shield works at the technical level? Happy to. Miller replied with a grin. Though they might be surprised to learn how simple the basic principle is, sometimes the best solutions are the ones hiding in plain sight. As the meeting room began to fill with curious collective officers, Walker watched their reactions to the technical presentations. Where they had expected to find a defeated enemy, they had instead discovered potential allies who could help their society evolve. It wasn't the victory they had come for, but it might be something far more valuable. Ada, Walker said quietly, send a message to Earth Command. Tell them to prepare for a different kind of first contact, the kind where both sides learn from each other. Message sent, the AI replied. And Captain, based on my analysis of collective behavioral patterns, I predict a 97% chance of successful integration of our technologies within 5 years. Walker smiled. Make that 2 years, Ada. You'll be amazed how fast people can change when they're excited about the future. 1 year after the battle that changed 2 civilizations, the U.S. Defiant approached Earth's orbital shipyards. Captain Walker stood at his familiar spot on the bridge. But this time, he wasn't watching for enemy ships. Instead, he observed the massive construction projects taking place all around them. Dozens of ships floated in various stages of completion, their hulls showing both the geometric patterns of human design and the organic curves of collective technology. Teams of human and alien engineers worked together in spacesuits, installing the new hybrid systems that both species had developed together. Quite a view, isn't it? Engineer Miller said as he joined Walker on the bridge. Hard to believe this all started with us nearly getting blown up. Ada, give me a status report on the integration project, Walker requested. The first wave of hybrid vessels is 87% complete, the AI reported. The combined human collective engineering teams have exceeded all projected deadlines by an average of 34 days. Dr. Gray's latest improvements to the Nexus core have been successfully implemented across the entire fleet. Lieutenant Reed looked up from her station with a smile. Speaking of improvements, the new targeting systems are amazing. The collective's organic computing combined with our AI processing, we can plot combat solutions twice as fast as before. Combat solutions that hopefully we won't need, Walker replied, though he returned her smile. How are our guests doing, Ada? The collective exchange officers are adapting well to their posts, Ada reported. Their neural patterns show increasing comfort with human customs and technology. The cultural integration program is proceeding at an optimal pace. Through the viewport, Walker watched as a shuttle carrying more collective engineers docked with one of the new ships. The vessel's design was unlike anything either species had created before, a perfect blend of both civilizations' best ideas. Captain, Reed called out, incoming transmission from Admiral Kresh's new flagship. The main screen lit up to show the familiar face of the collective leader, though his appearance had changed slightly. He now wore a modified version of a human uniform, adapted for his species' unique physiology. Captain Walker, Kresh greeted him warmly, his color shifting to the friendly hues they'd all learned to recognize. I trust you received the latest updates on the mirror shield improvements. Walker nodded. Your engineer's suggestions for the organic power distribution system were brilliant. The efficiency increase is remarkable. As were your Dr. Gray's modifications to our neural interfaces, Kresh replied. The Collective Council has officially voted to implement the new hybrid systems across our entire territory. They're calling it the Walker-Kresh Protocol. Miller chuckled. Famous already, Captain. Though I still say they should have included Ada in the name. None of this would work without AI coordination. Speaking of AI, Kresh continued, the first group of collective ships with integrated AI systems just completed their trial runs. The results were beyond our highest expectations. It seems your approach to artificial intelligence partnership was as revolutionary as your mirror shield technology. Walker watched as another shuttle passed by, this one carrying a mixed crew of human and collective scientists. How are the more conservative elements of the collective handling all these changes? Better than expected. Kresh's color shifted to a thoughtful shade. It's hard to argue with success. Our combined fleet's capabilities have advanced more in the past year than in the previous century. Some of the older council members are even talking about updating our first contact protocols. No more invasion fleets? Walker asked with a raised eyebrow. We're learning that there are better ways to grow than through conquest, Kresh replied. Your species taught us that strength comes in many forms. Sometimes the best way to become stronger is to learn from those who seem weaker at first glance. Dr. Gray entered the bridge, carrying his ever-present tablet. Admiral, you'll be pleased to know that the latest Nexus Core predictions show a 99% chance of successful integration between our species within the next 5 years. The cultural exchange programs are working better than we hoped. As is the technological exchange, Miller added. The new hybrid power cores are operating at 120% of projected efficiency. Turns out your organic technology works perfectly with our quantum systems. Kresh's color brightened. The Council has approved the next phase of the project. We're ready to begin construction of the first joint exploration fleet. Ships crewed by both species, using our combined technologies, ready to seek out new civilizations together. And approach them as equals, Walker added firmly. Of course, Kresh agreed. We've learned that lesson well. Speaking of which, the first class of human cadets will be graduating from the Collective Academy next month. Would you do us the honor of attending the ceremony? Walker smiled. Wouldn't miss it. Ada, make a note in my schedule. Already done, Captain. The AI replied. And may I add that the neural interface upgrades the Collective provided have improved my interaction capabilities by 43%. The combination of their organic processing and our quantum computing is quite remarkable. Through the viewport, Walker watched as one of the new hybrid ships powered up its engines for the first time. The vessel's hull glowed with a combination of human energy patterns and collective organic luminescence, beautiful and powerful at the same time. Dr. Gray, Walker called out, what's the status of the mirror shield adaptation for the new ships? Even better than the original, Gray replied enthusiastically. The Collective's organic energy distribution systems made it possible to create a more flexible shield matrix. The new ships can absorb and redirect energy with 30% more efficiency than the Defiant. Speaking of the Defiant, Kresh interjected, the Council has a proposal for you, Captain. We'd like to designate your ship as the official training vessel for the Joint Fleet Program. A ship that changed everything, teaching the next generation how to work together. Walker looked around his bridge, at the human crew who had become heroes, at the collective officers who had become friends, at the AI that had helped make it all possible. I think we'd be honored, Admiral. Though we'll need to update our training programs. Already working on it, Ada announced. I've combined human teaching methods with collective educational protocols to create an optimal learning experience for both species. And that's exactly why we succeeded, Walker said thoughtfully. Not because we had better weapons or stronger shields, but because we learned to take the best from both sides and make something new. Outside, more ships were taking shape in the shipyards. Each one represented not just a technological achievement, but a symbol of what was possible when species chose to work together instead of fighting. The mirror shield had started as a defensive weapon, but it had become something more, a metaphor for turning potential enemies into allies. Ada, Walker called out, ship-wide announcement please. Channel open, Captain. Walker looked out at the growing fleet, humanity's future taking shape before his eyes. To all crew members, human and collective alike, 1 year ago, we faced each other as enemies. Today, we stand together as partners, friends, and teachers for the next generation. Remember this moment. Remember that any problem can be solved, any difference can be bridged, if we're willing to learn from each other. Defiant out. As the announcement ended, another ship's lights came on in the shipyard. Its hull bore both human and collective markings, and its design represented the best of both worlds. It was no longer about one ship against a fleet. It was about two civilizations building a fleet together. "Ada," Walker said quietly, "send a message to Earth Command. Tell them the future is looking brighter than we ever imagined." "Message sent, Captain," the AI replied. "And based on current trends, I calculate 100% chance of success for our combined future." Walker smiled. For once, he didn't need the Nexus Core's predictions to know that Ada was right. The old mining moon hung silent in space, its gray surface scarred by centuries of meteor impacts. Captain James Walker stood at the viewport of the survey ship Starseeker, watching as his team's excavation robots carved through the moon's crust. 6 months of searching had led to this moment. Strange energy readings unlike anything humanity had encountered before. "Captain, you need to see this." The voice of Dr. Anna Reed crackled through his comm unit. Her usual calm tone carried an edge of excitement that made Walker turn immediately toward the exit. 5 minutes later, he stood beside her in the newly excavated chamber, staring at walls covered in flowing symbols that seemed to shift and change when viewed directly. The space hummed with an energy that made his skin tingle. "It's some kind of database," Anna said, her hand hovering over a crystalline structure that pulsed with soft blue light. "But the complexity, it makes our quantum computers look like stone tablets and chisels." Walker stepped closer, careful not to touch anything. Years of space exploration had taught him that ancient alien technology rarely appreciated being handled without proper precautions. How old? At least 50 million years, maybe older. Anna's hands flew over her scanning device. "But that's impossible. The energy readings are as strong as if it was activated yesterday." A holographic display suddenly flickered to life above the crystal, filling the chamber with intricate technical diagrams. Walker's breath caught in his throat. He'd served in the Earth Defense Fleet for 20 years, commanded 3 different ships, and helped design the newest class of battle cruisers. But what he saw in those diagrams made everything humanity had achieved look like children's toys. "It's a warship," he whispered. The design was unlike anything he'd ever seen. Curved lines that seemed to fold through dimensions that shouldn't exist, weapon systems that appeared to draw power from the fabric of reality itself. But what kind of enemy would need a ship like this? As if in response to his question, the hologram shifted. New images appeared. Beings of pure energy, massive entities that dwelled in the space between stars, creatures that could reshape reality with a thought. Walker felt a chill run down his spine as he recognized them from humanity's oldest myths and legends. Gods, demons, angels, titans. But these weren't religious icons or fairy tales. They were tactical analyses, threat assessments, weapon effectiveness reports. "My God," Anna breathed, her face pale in the hologram's light. They were real. All of them. And someone built this ship to fight them. Walker's military training kicked in, helping him push aside the philosophical implications to focus on practical matters. "Can you download this data?" Anna nodded, already connecting her equipment to the crystal matrix. "It'll take time to decrypt, but yes. The basic principles are similar to our quantum storage systems, just vastly more advanced." A sudden tremor ran through the chamber. Dust and small rocks showered down from the ceiling. Walker's hand went to his sidearm automatically, even though he knew it would be useless against any real threat here. "That's the 3rd quake in 2 hours, Anna said, checking her readings. "They're getting stronger, and they're not natural. Something's responding to our presence here." Walker keyed his comm. "Bridge, status report. Long-range sensors are picking up strange distortions in local spacetime." "Sir," his first officer responded. And we're detecting massive energy signatures at the edge of the system. Something's coming. Another tremor, stronger this time. The holographic display flickered and changed again, showing new images that made Walker's blood run cold. He saw worlds burning, civilizations falling, and above it all, massive beings of light and energy watching with cold indifference. "How long to complete the download?" he asked Anna. 10 minutes, maybe 15. Her fingers danced over the controls, trying to speed up the process. But there's something else. These designs, this technology, it's not just about fighting gods. It's about transcending them. The civilization that built this, they found a way to evolve beyond even these beings. But something happened before they could finish. The chamber shook again, and this time, the tremor didn't stop. Warning alerts blared through their comm units as the Star Seeker's sensors detected massive power spikes throughout the system. "All hands, emergency evacuation protocols," Walker ordered through the ship-wide comm. "Get everything packed and get back to the ship. Now." As his crew scrambled to follow orders, Walker helped Anna disconnect her equipment from the crystal matrix. The downloaded data would be incomplete, but it would have to be enough. They couldn't risk staying any longer. The journey back to the Star Seeker was a blur of rushing through shaking tunnels as the very fabric of space around them seemed to twist and warp. As they reached the airlock, Walker looked back at the ancient chamber one last time. The holographic display had changed to show one final image. A massive warship, its hull gleaming with impossible geometries, standing against a host of godlike beings. Below it, in characters that somehow translated themselves directly into his mind, was a simple message. They can be fought. They can be beaten. But the price is higher than you can imagine. Hours later, as the Star Seeker raced back toward Earth at full speed, Walker stood in Anna's lab. Watching this, she began the process of decoding the alien data. The ship's sensors showed massive disturbances spreading through the system they'd left behind, as if reality itself was being torn apart by furious giants. "It's going to take months to understand even the basic principles," Anna said, not looking up from her work. "Years to figure out how to build any of it, and that's assuming we can even replicate their materials and technology." Walker nodded, still seeing those final images in his mind. "How long do you think we have before they notice us?" "Really notice us?" Anna finally looked up, her expression grim. "They already have. Those disturbances we detected. They're looking for us. Searching. They know we found it. Then we better work fast." Walker straightened his uniform and headed for the door. He had reports to write, calls to make, and a war to prepare for. Humanity had just inherited the plans for a weapon that could challenge gods, and he had a feeling they were going to need it sooner rather than later. As he reached the door, Anna called out to him, "Captain, what do we do if we succeed? If we actually build this thing?" Walker thought about the images he'd seen. The destroyed worlds, the suppressed civilizations. He thought about humanity's long history of looking up at the stars and creating gods to explain them. "Then we do what humanity has always done when we meet gods," he said. "We rise up. We fight back. And this time, we have the tools to win." The Star Seeker continued its race toward Earth, carrying within its databases the seeds of humanity's greatest challenge and perhaps its greatest transformation. Behind them, space itself churned with the movement of ancient, angry beings who had grown too comfortable in their power. The game was about to change, and humanity had just found the rulebook. The massive underground facility buzzed with activity as thousands of workers and engineers moved between towering sections of the partially completed warship. Deep beneath the surface of Mars, Project Prometheus had grown into the largest engineering endeavor in human history. Captain Walker watched from an observation platform as robotic arms carefully positioned another quantum crystal panel into the ship's growing hull. "The mathematics are unlike anything we've ever seen," Anna said, standing beside him. Dark circles under her eyes testify to countless sleepless nights spent decoding the alien database. "It's not just advanced technology, It's a completely different way of thinking about reality itself. Walker nodded, his eyes fixed on the ship's strange curves and angles that seemed to bend in ways that hurt his eyes if he looked too long. 6 months had passed since their discovery on the mining moon, and Earth's combined resources had been poured into this single project. The threat of the Eternals, as they had come to call the godlike beings, hung over every decision, every moment of work. "How close are we?" he asked. Anna pulled up a holographic display showing the project's status. The main hull is 40% complete. The quantum drive core is stable, but... She hesitated. But what? The power requirements are impossible. Even with every fusion reactor on Mars running at full capacity, we can't generate enough energy to power the main weapon systems, let alone the reality anchors. A deep rumble shook the observation platform. Warning lights flashed, and emergency sirens began to wail. Walker grabbed the railing as the entire facility trembled. "Status report." He barked into his comm unit. "Quantum core breach in Section 7. A panicked voice responded. "The crystal matrix is destabilizing." Walker was already running, Anna close behind him. They sprinted through corridors filled with rushing workers and flashing emergency lights. When they reached Section 7, they found chaos. The experimental quantum core, their 15th attempt to replicate the ancient designs, was throwing off waves of energy that twisted the very air around it. "Clear the area," Anna shouted, pushing past the gathered engineers to reach the control panel. Her fingers flew over the controls as she tried to contain the reaction. "The crystal lattice is collapsing. We need tow." She never finished her sentence. The core pulsed once, brilliantly, and then imploded. Reality seemed to hiccup, and for a brief moment, Walker saw something. Shapes and colors that shouldn't exist, beams of light watching with cold interest, and a sense of vast, ancient awareness turning its attention toward them. Then it was over. The core was dark, the facility's backup systems humming as they restored power. But Walker could see in Anna's face that she had seen it too. "They know," she whispered. "They've been watching us all along." Hours later, in the facility's main conference room, Walker stood before the project's leadership team. Admiral Thomas Grant, the overall commander of Earth's defense forces, looked grim as he reviewed the damage reports. 3 injured, millions in damaged equipment, and another setback to the timeline, the Admiral said. "The Security Council is getting nervous, Walker. We're burning through resources faster than we can replace them, and we still don't have a working prototype." "We're close," Anna insisted. She had spent the last hour examining data from the failed test. "The core breach showed us something important. The power source the ancients used, it wasn't just about raw energy output. There's something else, something we've been missing." She pulled up the original designs, focusing on a section they had previously thought was decorative. "Look at these patterns. We thought they were just structural support. But they're not. They're consciousness circuits." The room fell silent. Walker leaned forward, studying the complex patterns. "What do you mean, consciousness circuits?" "The ship doesn't just need energy. It needs awareness, consciousness, life." Anna's eyes were bright with excitement despite her exhaustion. That's why the ancient civilization was so advanced. They found a way to merge consciousness with technology. The ship isn't just a machine. It's meant to be alive. Admiral Grant shook his head. "That's impossible. How could we even begin to?" Another tremor shook the facility, but this one was different. It came with a pressure in their minds, a sense of vast attention focusing on them. The lights flickered, and every screen in the room filled with the same image. A being of pure energy, its form barely constrained by physical reality. "CEAs," a voice thundered in their minds. "You many deal with forces beyond your comprehension." The image shifted, showing scenes of destruction. Worlds burning, civilizations falling, reality itself being torn apart. "This is your own warning. Abandon This pro-GCT or FAC, the QONCQUENCEs of your DEFIANC, the presence vanished, leaving behind a silence heavy with implications. Walker looked around the room, seeing the fear on every face, but also determination. "Well," Admiral Grant said quietly, "I guess that answers the question of whether we're on the right track." He turned to Anna. "How long to implement your consciousness integration theory?" Anna was already working at her terminal, making calculations. A week to modify the designs. Maybe 2 weeks to build a new prototype. But she looked up, her expression serious. "We'll need volunteers. The process of merging consciousness with the ship's systems, I don't know what it will do to a human mind." Walker stepped forward. "I volunteer." When Anna started to protest, he held up a hand. "I found those ruins. I saw what's coming. If there's a chance this works, we have to take it." The next 2 weeks passed in a blur of frantic activity. New systems were built, incorporating Anna's discoveries about consciousness integration. Walker underwent a battery of tests and preparations, all while the sense of being watched grew stronger. Strange phenomena began appearing across the solar system. Impossible auroras on airless moons, gravitational distortions that defied physics, messages written in fire across the surfaces of distant planets. Finally, the day arrived. Walker lay in the newly designed interface chamber, surrounded by quantum crystals that hummed with potential energy. Anna's voice came through the speakers, tense but professional. "Remember, this is just a test of the basic interface. Don't try to access the weapons systems or reality anchors." Walker finished. "I remember. Just establishing the connection and testing basic awareness." He closed his eyes as the system powered up. There was a sensation like falling, like his mind was expanding beyond the confines of his skull. Colors and patterns swirled behind his eyelids, and then he was the ship. He could feel every circuit, every quantum crystal, every atom of its partially completed form. More than that, he could feel the threads of reality itself, could see how they could be twisted, folded, manipulated. And in the distance, he sensed them, the Eternals, watching with a mixture of fury and fear as humanity took its first steps toward matching their power. Walker opened his eyes, both his human ones and his new awareness, and smiled. "It works," he said, his voice overlaid with harmonics that made the air shimmer. "It actually works." Anna's readings were going crazy, but her voice was steady as she asked, "How does it feel?" Walker considered the question, feeling the power thrumming through systems that were both machine and alive. Technology and consciousness merged into something entirely new. "It feels," he said finally, "like humanity just got promoted to the big leagues, and our new teammates aren't going to like it one bit." The stars looked different now to Walker. Through his human eyes, they were the same pinpoints of light they'd always been. But through his connection to the Prometheus, he could see the currents of reality flowing between them, the quantum threads that bound the universe together. 3 months of consciousness integration training had changed him in ways he was still discovering. He stood on the bridge of the nearly completed warship, watching as the final systems came online. The Prometheus hung in Mars orbit, its hull gleaming with impossible geometries that hurt the mind to look at directly. Even powered down, it radiated an awareness that made other ships' crews nervous. "Final diagnostics are complete," Anna said from her station. She barely left the ship since they'd moved it out of the underground facility. "All systems are green. Well, as green as we can understand them to be." Walker nodded, feeling the ship's readiness through their shared consciousness. The quantum weapons were armed, the reality anchors were stable, and the probability drive was spooled up for its first real test. They had rushed the final stages of construction after their long-range sensors detected massive energy signatures approaching the solar system. The Eternals were done watching and waiting. A flash of light filled the bridge, and suddenly they weren't alone. The being that appeared was difficult to look at, a shape of pure energy barely contained in a humanoid form. Light leaked from its edges, and reality bent around it like water around a stone. "I am the voice of the Eternal Council," it said, its words bypassing their ears to appear directly in their minds. "You have been warned. You have been shown. Yet you persist in this foolishness." Walker straightened, letting his connection to the ship feed him data about the entity before them. The reality anchors were already responding, creating a bubble of stabilized space-time around the bridge. "We persist in defending ourselves," he said, "in reaching our full potential." Potential. The being's form flickered with what might have been amusement. "You are children playing with forces that could tear reality apart. We have guided the evolution of countless species, preserved the stability of this universe for millions of years. We will not allow you to endanger everything with your reckless ambition." The being waved a hand, and through the viewport, they watched as a star at the edge of their solar system flickered and died. Just like that, billions of years of nuclear fire snuffed out like a candle. "This is but a fraction of our power," the voice said. "Submit. Accept our guidance, or your species will not survive what comes next." Walker felt Anna's fear through the ship's systems, felt the terror of every crew member who had just watched a star die. But he also felt something else, the ship's weapons powering up, recognizing a threat to its crew. The ancient weapons were designed for exactly this moment. Guidance. Walker let his anchor flow through the consciousness link, and the ship's hull began to pulse with a deep, threatening light. "Is that what you call it? Suppressing species that might one day challenge you, keeping the universe in stasis because you're afraid of change." The voice's form became brighter, more dangerous. "You understand nothing. The being stopped suddenly, its attention drawn to the readings it was getting from the Prometheus. For the first time, Walker felt something like fear from the entity. "This vessel," it said, "you've actually done it. You've merged your consciousness with their technology." The voice's form expanded, filling half the bridge with crackling energy. "This cannot be allowed to continue." Reality twisted. Walker felt massive powers activating across the solar system as more Eternals emerged from whatever higher dimension they inhabited. They were done with warnings. But he was ready. "Battle stations," he commanded, both through his voice and through his link to the ship. "This is not a drill. All hands prepare for dimensional shift." The voice raised a hand, power gathering around it that could likely vaporize a planet. But before it could strike, Walker activated the probability drive. Space folded around the Prometheus in ways that made conventional physics scream in protest. When it unfolded, they were 3 light minutes from their previous position, weapons hot, and reality anchors at full power. "Target the nearest eternal energy signature," Walker ordered, feeling the ship's excitement at finally fulfilling its design purpose. "Let's show them what this old tech can do." The Prometheus's main gun fired, not a beam or projectile, but a lance of concentrated probability that turned maybe into definitely. The blast caught an eternal mid-manifestation, and for the first time in millions of years, one of the self-proclaimed gods knew pain. The battle that followed would be remembered for centuries, though human senses could only perceive fragments of it. The Eternals wielded powers that could reshape reality, but the Prometheus was designed to anchor reality in place, to turn their greatest strength into a weakness. Walker felt the ship's consciousness merging more deeply with his own as they fought, showing him possibilities and tactical options his human mind could never have conceived. Space itself became a battlefield. The Eternals tried to simply erase the Prometheus from existence, but the probability drive kept shifting them between moments of maybe, making them impossible to target. The ship's quantum weapons proved devastatingly effective, disrupting the energy patterns that made up the Eternals' forms. But they were still badly outnumbered. For every hit they scored, 2 more Eternals appeared. Reality anchors were draining power faster than they could regenerate it, and Walker could feel the strain on both the ship's systems and his own mind. "Power reserves at 30%. Anna reported, her voice steady despite the chaos around them. "Reality anchor coverage is starting to show gaps. We can't keep this up much longer." Walker gritted his teeth as another blast rocked the ship. Through their shared consciousness, he could feel the Prometheus's concern for its crew, its determination to protect them. An idea formed, dangerous, possibly suicidal, but potentially their only chance. "Anna," he said, "remember how you said the ancients found a way to transcend even the Eternals?" She looked up from her station, eyes widening as she followed his thought process through the ship's systems. "The consciousness integration. You want to take it further? Walker, we have no idea what that would do to you, to any of us." Another hit shook the bridge. Through the viewport, they could see the Eternals gathering for a concentrated attack, their combined power building into something that would overwhelm even the Prometheus's defenses. "We're out of options," Walker said. He opened the ship-wide comm. "All hands, what I'm about to attempt is completely voluntary, but anyone who wants to help save humanity, open your mind to the ship. Now." He felt it as crew members connected, one by one, their consciousness flowing into the ship's systems. Anna was the last, adding her brilliant mind to the growing collective. Walker took a deep breath and initiated the final sequence they'd found in the ancient database, but had been afraid to try. The Prometheus's hull began to glow with a light that had never been seen in this universe, and reality itself held its breath as humanity prepared to take its next step. Light flooded through the Prometheus as hundreds of minds merged into one. Walker felt himself dissolving, his consciousness spreading through the ship's systems until he couldn't tell where he ended and the others began. Anna's brilliant analytical mind, the crew's combined experience, the ship's ancient wisdom, all of it flowed together into something entirely new. The Eternals paused in their attack, sensing the change. Through his expanded awareness, Walker could finally see them clearly. Not gods, but beings who had achieved a form of technological immortality millions of years ago. They had stopped evolving, stopped growing, choosing instead to maintain their power by keeping younger civilizations from reaching their level. "What are you doing?" The voice's words echoed through space itself. "Stop this. You don't understand the forces you're playing with." But they did understand now. The ship's database hadn't just contained weapons and defenses. It held the key to the next step in evolution. The ancient civilization that built the Prometheus had discovered it, but they'd been destroyed before they could complete their transformation. Now, humanity would finish what they started. The ship's hull began to crack, not from damage, but from growth. New geometries emerged, folding through dimensions that hadn't existed moments before. The consciousness collective that had once been the crew began to expand, reaching out to touch levels of reality the Eternals had never dared to explore. "You can't stop this." Walker's voice came from everywhere and nowhere, merged with hundreds of others. "Humanity isn't meant to stay still. We don't want to rule or control. We want to grow." The Eternals attacked in panic now, their combined power enough to shatter planets. But the Prometheus was changing faster than they could adapt. Every blast they fired was absorbed into the ship's evolving structure, converted into energy for the transformation. But the process was taking its toll. Walker could feel the strain on the human minds linked to the system. They weren't meant to handle this much power, this much awareness. One by one, crew members began to burn out, their consciousness fading from the collective. "Hold on." Anna's thoughts merged with his, helping to stabilize the remaining minds. "We're almost there. The ship is showing us the way." Through their shared awareness, Walker saw what she meant. The Prometheus wasn't just a weapon. It was a cocoon designed to protect its inhabitants during their metamorphosis into something beyond even the Eternals' understanding. But the price was higher than anyone had imagined. "Your bodies are dying," the voice said, its tone mixing fear with something like pity. "This transformation will destroy your physical forms. Is this what you want? To end your species for a chance at power?" "Not power," Walker responded through the ship's systems. "Freedom. The freedom to choose our own path, to become what we're meant to be." Another wave of crew members faded from the collective, their bodies giving out under the strain. Walker felt his own physical form beginning to fail, organs shutting down as his consciousness expanded beyond their capacity to contain it. But through their combined awareness, he could see the pattern completing itself, the transformation reaching its critical point. The Eternals gathered their power for one final attack, drawing energy from across the galaxy. Space itself began to tear under the strain of their combined might, but they were too late. The Prometheus's hull shattered completely, releasing a burst of energy that rippled through every level of reality. Walker felt his physical body dissolve, but his consciousness remained, merged with Anna's and the surviving crew members into something that defied description. They existed now on a plane the Eternals couldn't reach, their combined awareness spreading through space-time like ripples in a cosmic pond. Through what remained of his individual perspective, Walker observed the Eternals recoiling from the transformation. Their power, once seemingly limitless, now appeared crude and constrained compared to what humanity had become. They hadn't just matched the ancient civilization's achievement. They'd surpassed it. What? What are you? The voice's question echoed through dimensions, its fear evident in every word. The collective consciousness that had once been the Prometheus crew considered the question. They were no longer purely human, but they hadn't lost their humanity either. They had become something new, something that could bridge the gap between physical reality and higher dimensions. "We are what comes next," they answered in a chorus of merged voices. "We are the change you feared, the evolution you tried to prevent, and we are not alone." Across the galaxy, they could sense other civilizations approaching similar breakthroughs. Young species reaching for the stars, asking questions, pushing boundaries. The Eternals had managed to suppress them for millions of years, but they couldn't stop the natural progression forever. The collective reached out, touching the minds of the Eternals with their new awareness. They could destroy them now, erase them from existence as easily as the Eternals had once extinguished stars. But that wasn't humanity's way. "Your time as gods is over," the collective consciousness announced. "But your time as fellow travelers is just beginning. You can evolve with us, or you can fade away. The choice is yours." Some of the Eternals fled, vanishing into the dimensions they had ruled for so long. But others, led by the voice, remained. Through their new awareness, the collective could sense curiosity awakening in them, the first stirring of change in millions of years. The remains of the Prometheus floated in space, its purpose fulfilled. The transformation had cost them their physical forms, but they had gained something far greater. Walker felt Anna's consciousness brush against his in their shared awareness, her brilliant mind already exploring the possibilities of their new existence. They had become what the ancient civilization had dreamed of, beings who could touch both the physical world and higher dimensions, who could guide without controlling, teach without suppressing. And somewhere, in what remained of their individual selves, they knew that humanity would follow. Not all at once, not in the same way, but slowly, naturally, as each person and generation made their own choice to evolve. The collective reached out to Earth, sending a message that would change their civilization forever. "We have opened the door. The path is hard, the price is high, but the future is worth it. You are not meant to be ruled by gods. You are meant to become more than gods ever dreamed of being." And across the galaxy, young civilizations looked up at their stars and felt, for the first time in millions of years, the touch of minds that wanted to help them grow rather than keep them small. The age of gods was ending. The age of evolution had begun. 10 years had passed since the transformation of the Prometheus crew. Earth had changed in ways that would have seemed impossible before. The knowledge brought back by the collective consciousness had revolutionized human understanding of reality itself. Cities now floated on quantum fields, diseases were cured by probability manipulation, and the first steps toward voluntary evolution were being taken by those who chose to follow the path the Prometheus had opened. The being that had once been Captain James Walker moved through multiple dimensions as it observed a group of students at the new Prometheus Academy. Young minds learning to touch higher dimensions while keeping their physical forms intact, a gentler path than the violent transformation he and his crew had undergone. Anna's consciousness merged with his briefly, sharing her excitement over the latest breakthrough. They had found a way to make the evolution process safer, more controlled. No more burning out physical bodies or traumatic transformations. Humanity could now take its time, growing into its new potential at its own pace. They're adapting faster than we expected, her thoughts mingled with his. Through their shared awareness, they watched as a young student successfully shifted her consciousness between dimensions for the first time, her physical form remaining stable thanks to the new techniques they had developed. The voice materialized beside them, its once overwhelming presence now simply another form of existence. Many of the Eternals who had chosen to stay had begun their own evolution, guided by the knowledge unlocked through the Prometheus project. They were learning to grow again after millions of years of stagnation. "Your species continues to surprise us," the voice communicated. "We thought we had seen every possible path of evolution, but you found one we never imagined." Walker's consciousness expanded to take in the whole solar system. Humanity's first colonies were spreading throughout their local space, each one a new experiment in combining physical and higher dimensional existence. Some chose to remain fully human, others opted for partial transcendence, and a few followed the Prometheus path to complete transformation. The key was understanding that there isn't just one right way to evolve. Walker replied. The ancient civilization that built the Prometheus thought they had to transform everyone at once. That's why they failed. We learned to let each individual and civilization choose their own path. They shifted their awareness to a distant star system, where another young species was taking their first steps into space. The collective consciousness that had once been the Prometheus crew had spent years undoing the damage caused by the Eternal suppression, carefully awakening the natural drive for growth and discovery in countless civilizations. Anna's consciousness focused on a particular moment unfolding below them. A young researcher had just made the connection between quantum mechanics and consciousness, the same breakthrough that had started their own journey. But this time, instead of having to rush into conflict, the species would have guidance and protection as they explored their potential. "Some of them will choose to remain as they are," she observed. "Others will evolve in ways we haven't imagined. Each path is valid." The voice's consciousness rippled with newfound understanding. "We thought we were protecting the universe by maintaining stability. We never realized that stagnation was a greater threat than change." Walker reached out to touch the minds of his former crew, now spread across the galaxy as teachers and guides. Each of them had found their own way to help others while continuing to grow themselves. The Prometheus hadn't just been a warship, it had been the key to unlocking the true nature of existence itself. Through their expanded awareness, they perceived the patterns of reality shifting and growing. The universe was awakening from its enforced slumber, countless civilizations beginning to reach for their true potential. It wasn't always smooth or peaceful, but it was alive with possibility in a way it hadn't been for millions of years. "Look," Anna's consciousness drew their attention to a particular quantum pattern. "They're starting to communicate across dimensional barriers. Soon, they won't need us as guides anymore." Walker felt pride mixing with bittersweet understanding. Their time as teachers was gradually coming to an end, just as the Eternals' time as gods had ended. But unlike the Eternals, they had prepared for this moment, ready to step back and let the younger civilizations find their own ways forward. A flash of familiar energy caught their attention. The remains of the Prometheus still orbited Mars, now serving as a memorial and a reminder. But it wasn't just a relic. The ship's consciousness had evolved along with them, becoming something unique in the universe. Part machine, part energy, part collective memory, it continued to protect and guide in its own way. Walker merged briefly with the ship's awareness, feeling again the excitement of discovery, the terror of confrontation, and the joy of transformation. They had started their journey thinking they needed a weapon to fight gods. Instead, they had found a key to unlock the universe's greatest potential. "The next step is beginning," the voice observed, its consciousness touching the quantum fields where new forms of life were emerging spontaneously from the interaction of physical and higher dimensions. Life we never dreamed possible. That's the real victory, Walker replied, sharing the thought with Anna and the dispersed consciousness of their former crew. Not defeating gods or achieving power, but opening the door to infinite possibilities. They turned their attention to Earth one last time, watching as humanity continued its gradual voluntary evolution. Some chose to remain purely human, preserving the core of what their species had always been. Others reached for the stars in new forms, exploring realities the Eternals had never dared to touch. Each choice was honored, each path respected. The being that had once been Captain Walker spread his consciousness through the cosmos, feeling the pulse of awakening civilizations, the stirring of new potential, the birth of possibilities that even their expanded awareness couldn't fully grasp. The warship that had been built to fight gods had instead become a key to something far greater. The freedom to grow, to change, to become more than anyone had ever imagined possible. And somewhere in the quantum fields between dimensions, the consciousness of the Prometheus continued its eternal watch, no longer a weapon but a guardian of infinite potential, a reminder that the greatest power isn't the ability to destroy or control, but the wisdom to know when to step aside and let the universe unfold in its own beautiful, unpredictable way. The story of the warship so advanced that even the gods feared it had become legend. But the truth was both simpler and more profound. It had never been about fear at all. It had been about hope, about growth, about the courage to reach beyond the known and embrace the infinite possibilities that lay ahead. And that was a story that would continue to be told, in one form or another, as long as consciousness existed to dream of what might come next.